In space, no one can hear you scream. Well, except when lasers are fired or when we crank up that FTL drive. Then sounds are needed. Science fiction is by far my favorite genre in fiction. I watch every movie I hear of and I read tons of novels each year. And I am very forgiving when it comes to bad things in the genre. I'm not going to dismiss an entertaining piece of sci-fi just because of small errors, or sometimes not even the big ones. I find that doing so is what obnoxious douchebags do, smartasses, and who wants to be that, right? That said, it is almost impossible to find a sci-fi story, especially movies and TV, that can stand a more thorough scrutiny. Especially when it comes to actual science and not just simple logic. Both the universal kind and the internal ones dictated by rules within the story itself. The reason I do tend to forgive stories is if they play the so-called rule of cool right. If something is entertaining enough, the stupid, illogical, or incorrect can be forgiven. If it's not, well, then we have a problem. The rule of cool tend to work best the first time you watch it. They fling the bling in front of you and you get mesmerized by it. Cool, groundbreaking special effects, awesome action, thrilling horror. There are plenty of things that makes you forget logic and science in a story, at least for the moment. Then it comes, that feeling that movie you just watched and enjoyed wasn't perhaps as good after all. And sometimes this thing can take years or decades to discover even. That cool movie with the awesome special effects you saw in your teens just looks like a car crash now. We all know that feeling. Sometimes it's even best not to rewatch old movies from your childhood for this very reason. And sometimes this just happens with shorter time spans. A personal example and opinion of mine is how the Alien movies has changed for me over the years. When I was younger, a teenager, Aliens was the most exciting and thrilling movie I knew of. I found it more exciting than the original Alien. Watching these two movies today leaves me with a complete different feeling. The original Alien movie is a masterpiece of suspense and deep space horror. The claustrophobic feeling and helplessness of the crew is like a constant variable. Space itself is simply dark, indifferent and unforgiving here. In general, a lot of sci-fi from the 70s did this so well, making space itself a character of the story. In the sequel Aliens, focus is more on the action, and people aren't that helpless anymore, taking away some of the suspense. No, now they are badass space marines even. Here the pleasures of the movie revolves around that dark heavy action and the cynical company that basically is the true evil of the story. It is still a great movie, don't get me wrong. Not just that great anymore perhaps, at least in my opinion. Some of these marine tropes are a bit dated and don't really feel natural anymore. One movie that still feels a lot less dated is the original Alien. That movie will surely be regarded as a masterpiece for all time, partially because it very rarely relies on cool stuff. I struggle to even find an example of a bad thing about it that falls under the rule of cool. A couple of things though. The dark, gloomy industrial surroundings. This looks cool, but is very unlikely to be a reality. Science on how the environment affects us is well known, and brighter accommodations will be important in a space-traveling future. There's even water pouring down some free-hanging change in one place. Water just pouring around freely on a spaceship? No, I doubt that would ever happen. Then there's the ship and tech in general. We are talking about a spacefaring Civ with interstellar travel capabilities, obviously. LV-426, The planet is hardly in our solar system, for example, but no mention on how this works in regards of speed and tech is done ever in the movie. They obviously have FTL drives or something resembling it. And what's the deal with having artificial gravity? No explanations or mentions of this at all. All in all, no big things, and very downplayed. When the rule of cool is not the immediate answer needed to accept something stupid, you know they succeeded. Alien is an example of a movie that does the rule of cool perfectly. A masterpiece regardless of the small things mentioned. But on the other side of the spectrum is a movie like The Last Jedi, which contains many things, but the most memorable example of rule of cool is most likely the scene where they use the FTL drive to crash into the big bad enemy mothership. A really awesome scene, emotionally and visually. It simply looks so cool. But it is completely and utterly moronic. And an example, a perfect one even, of when the rule of cool is used to hide something really, really bad in the story. It doesn't take much wisdom to ask the simple question: if a ship traveling with FTL can rip through another behemoth of a ship like that by simply activating its drive and go kamikaze on them, why the hell have they not used that before? Why not simply always use remotely operated big-ass ships to crash into your enemies? To be fair, in general, this question should be asked about all space dramas that have FTL drives. Other shows usually avoid rubbing the topic in your face by simply not addressing them at all. And an elephant sitting quietly in a room is perhaps often more to be preferred to a complete stampede. This was a brief introduction to the rule of cool and my new channel. Welcome. Please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. I will address the rule of cool and many other things regarding logic or the lack of it in science fiction in many more future videos.